what advice would you give to women that aren't parents yet? What work can we do? And what practices can we be doing to prepare for parenting and also for during pregnancy?
But I think that it's important to develop a practice of mindfulness, to understand your own childhood baggage, to go to some therapy to understand what your pitfalls are. I always say we're not living a life, we're living a pattern. And if you can see every relationship as an awakener to your own healing, then it's not about fixing the kid or finding the three perfect things to tell your child. There's no such thing. It's not about strategy as much as it's about healing and coming from abundance.
What can I do to actually be connected more to my heart?
Well, I think first your life will show you that it's not working, right? Your body will break down, your relationships won't work, you'll be exhausted and tired and irritable and snappy.
Wait, but that's normal in the Western world. That's considered so normal that. Hi, my name is Aggie, and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond. Dr. Shefali, I have been such a big fan of yours. So thank you so much for joining this conversation. At Biohacking Bestie, we're focusing on biohacking, obviously, and figuring out what's the best way for us to optimize our body. And the more I got into biohacking, the more I realized, I'm like, oh, interesting. I don't always only want to rely on science. I think there's so much knowledge in the Eastern practices and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. So I felt really passionate about combining both the science and the Eastern. And you're doing exactly the same thing for parenting.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm very much an avid student of Eastern spirituality because I think if we only do healing the Western way, using Western psychological principles, we are going to fall short. So, in my practice, in my work, in my books, I really integrate what I love about Eastern spirituality, the principles that I try to live with. And I combine that in the parenting, in relationships. And I find it to be very effective. And it gives the whole picture, it gives the full picture for me. And if I do only one or the other, it kind of falls short.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, when I first got into it, I was like, oh, I need to pick which side I'm on. And then you realize maybe I don't have to pick, which is such a beautiful permission to also realize that we put ourselves in those boxes. Maybe we don't really have to, right? Whether it's parenting, whatever it is. Like, why can't I just take the best of both worlds?
Absolutely, yes. And you learn to take the concepts that work for you and what I find that works for my clients. And I kind of have now a practice that follows a path. Of course, I'm flexible, but I have found what works. And I also have an institute. I teach it, and it's replicable. It's effective. It helps parents. It helps individuals in their own lives. So yeah, we can get into that more.
Yeah, well, I would love to. So, for example, with I'm very curious, what do you find from Eastern practices that it's no longer relevant, given that we live in cities, that we were, we have a very different reality than people from 1,000 years ago? What was the one thing you had to divorce that was very common in the Eastern practices or traditional practices?
So help me understand your question. Say it again
So
in a different
you're
way.
like combining the Eastern practices and the Western ones. And so which ones of the Eastern practices you find that they no longer resonate for a Western parent that you're coaching? That is there anything that you had to like unlearn almost and just bring
Hmm.
the Western practice?
Well, I think that, no one size fits all. So maybe in the Eastern family systems, there's so much more communality. There's a lot of communal living, which doesn't work in the West, right? In the West, it's so individualistic, it's so nuclear. But that's one of the reasons why in the West, the mother especially is overwhelmed, overburdened because she's trying to do everything. And in the East, that mother has more support of family, the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law. So I think, you have to adjust the approach. But what I teach more is not such an Eastern cultural practice, but Eastern spiritual practice. So in terms of meditation and coming back to the present moment and understanding that life is cyclical, it's all cause and effect, it's not so linear like in the West.
Which is
Life,
always up, if you're not doing better than the month before, then you're failing, right?
yes, yes. So that's how I change the approach. So in the West, there is a big focus on the doing, on the achievement,
Yeah.
on the goal, on tomorrow, and success and happiness and wealth is very linear.
Hmm.
Eastern spirituality is more cyclical, more focused on the being, more focused on the present moment. It's not future based, it's not achievement based, and knowledge of the self is more focused on than external achievements and material possessions.
No, beautiful. It resonates deeply because I think it's really hard to break free from this conditioning that we're in the Western world, where it's like I still catch myself thinking like, "What's next? What's next?" The dopamine hit of like, "What are you working on? What's the next big thing?" I want to get to parenting, but before we do, I want to talk about how we can potentially get ready for parenting. So I'm not a mom yet. It's my biggest dream, and I feel like it's going to happen very soon. I'm getting married in a few months, and I'm like
Awesome.
growing up. And I feel like, what advice would you give to women that aren't parents yet? What work can we do, and what practices can we be doing to prepare for parenting and also for during pregnancy? I know nothing can prepare you for
So I
being a parent, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing is that nothing can prepare you. But I think that it's important to develop a practice of mindfulness, to understand your own childhood baggage, to go to some therapy to understand what your pitfalls are, and you kind of already know them through your relationship. Kind of start to work on that. Also, understanding child psychology always helps. Like, oh, okay, my 2 year old is going to drive me crazy because that's what they're designed to do, not because I've done a bad job as a parent. Things like that can prepare you. But I think the most important thing I tell new parents or to be parents is that you have to realize that this child is coming to fulfill their own destiny. They're not coming to make you happier, to love your husband more or your partner more. They're not coming to be your therapist, your mother, your savior, your guide, your teacher, your friend. They're coming to live their own life. And
Wow.
in that, they are a teacher. In that, they are your awakener. But you cannot use your children to fulfill your own needs. And that is the most fundamental teaching that I give parents, is that your child has not come here to fulfill your needs.
But isn't it the hardest? I'm not a parent, but I can see that play out in my family, in the family of my friends, in my friends who have little children. Like you say that a lot, that we women are so good at creating a script in our head of the perfect scenario, and we just feel really disappointed if it doesn't happen.
Exactly. So this is the biggest pitfall of a new or to be parent. We have a fantasy that this child will make us feel all the feel good feelings that we've been longing for. We've been longing to feel accomplished. And the child will be this puppet that will do all these amazing things that will make me feel super accomplished. This child will listen to me, so I will feel super in control. This child will love me, so I will feel super loved and secure. This child will be the best parts of me, so I don't have to deal with my shadow, my pain, my baggage, my crap. This child will be my emblem of all the things that I've been longing to feel in my life that I've never allowed myself to feel on my own. So we put all this pressure on this child before the child is even born. And
Yeah.
then we realize that the child is, ordinary or average or like our mother-in-law or nothing like us. And we feel this sense of loss and betrayal. And then we take it out on the child. And then the child is feeling, what the hell did I do? Why don't you love me unconditionally? And the child is absorbing all our disappointment and pain and anger that they did not work out the way
Yeah.
we wanted. And that's how the dysfunctional cycle gets passed on.
Yeah, and I think I love that, we tend to outsource the love, the sense of accomplishment, sort of insource and realize, what am I trying to get out of this relationship, even with my partner for now? Obviously, I want him to listen to me because I don't really listen to myself and my own intuition. But when he doesn't do it, that's like a big deal, right? And all of these things that we as a, I'm going to speak in first person. So I do, that instead of going within, I would rather get someone else to give me that sense of accomplishment. My million followers on Instagram, I need that validation that I'm important instead of just giving it to myself and realizing that's not important. But it is really, really hard to like, what are the stages of awareness so you can realize that? Because I think from my perspective, there is this moment when you're unaware, you feel like you're great. Then you are aware and you're like, oh my God, I see my shadow and this is not fun and it hurts. And our ego is crushed. And then it's important to power through that moment and realize that it's okay that you do that because you're human.
Absolutely. And it's okay if it's always okay, but when we do it with other adults in our lives, at least they have the capacity for perspective. At least they have the language to say, I don't like that. At least they have two legs that can take them far, and they can drive and they can get a job and they can leave us. Our children are subjugated to our quote unquote psychological bondage, and they only know themselves through us. So when we show disappointment to them, when we express our resentment or our anger, they interpret that as they are wrong, they are bad. And so when we are unconscious with our children, there's a greater tendency to create in the other person a sense of shame, guilt, and lesser thanness, unworthiness, than it is with another adult. And you know what damage two adults can do to each other. So
Yeah.
imagine the damage we could do to our children by not resolving our own inadequacies, by not dealing with our own unworthiness. We can do a lot of damage to our children. So I don't want to scare you or scare parents, because here's another good thing: no matter what you do, you're going to mess up your kids in some way. That's the good side of it. Like, don't worry, this is part of it. But the challenging part is, what do you do once you are aware? Are you willing to heal? Are you willing to do the work once you are aware? That is our challenge and invitation.
And that was actually my next point, that I'm imagining a listener, there's a woman, there's a child in the back, she's driving, listening to this podcast, and she realizing, oh my God, I definitely screw up my child. And there's this like feeling of like, okay, before I read Dr. Shefali's old books and figure out how to do it, and then I'm going to be failing, now I'm going to just spend another couple of months like screwing up my child. And I think what I noticed in my spiritual journey is only through like self-forgiveness and grace I can actually make a change. If I shame myself about I can't shame myself into a change. Every time I try, it doesn't work. I almost like shut down.
Yes. So because when I talk, sometimes parents feel like, oh my goodness, I have to do this perfectly.
Yes.
No, there's no such thing. It's our ego that beats us up, because our ego fools us to think we couldn't be perfect.
Yeah.
So once you take that out, that this is not about perfection, it's normal for children to deal with the disappointments of human existence. It's a good thing for your child to be disappointed by you. It's a good thing to mess up, because then they learn this is the human existence. However, what I'm teaching parents to do is to uncover and awaken why it is we're messing up, and correct our belief systems, because it's our belief systems that lead us to anger or to shaming our children. There's something we believe in that isn't happening in the reality that causes us to get angry. So once we uncover that, then our children become actually our awakeners to heal ourselves. And what a wonderful thing that is.
It's honestly, I had this beautiful. I don't have kids yet, but I don't know. I did like a plant medicine journey, and what the message that came was like, oh, the biggest mistake that people do, they think that they're here to teach our children something instead of understanding they're the students of their children, and you're here to be reminded of what it's like to be joy and presence and unconditional love, right? And it's like we feel like there's so much we need to put on our child instead of what can I actually receive, what can I surrender to by.
Yeah, there's so much. And that's what we go into this journey top heavy, that we are in charge, we know best, and we have to give all this information to these children, and we miss the whole point of the journey.
I'm obsessed with your work because there are very few women still that are heart centered, that lead from the heart, but are very intelligent. And it's the combining the Eastern and the Western, the yin and yang that you're balancing is so inspirational. I don't resonate with women who are too feminine or too masculine because it's like you're picking one or the other. Like it's all about the marriage of the East, the yin and the yang, and you're doing it so beautifully. And you remind women to lead from their heart, but also have the knowledge and awareness of like, okay, this is my pattern. This is what I'm playing out again and again. And having that awareness to step back through mindfulness meditation and realize I'm like, okay, now I see this is again that I'm repeating this, frustration. I have that around my fiance leaving. When he leaves for the day or he doesn't call me back, the abandonment kicks in and I get upset with him instead of sitting down like, oh, why does this keep coming up when I feel kind of abandoned when he's just away? And so now I'm realizing and trying not to, I guess, follow the same pattern because it's just boring, when you're reliving the same thing and call it alive.
Yes, yes. I always say we're not living a life, we're living a pattern. Um, and
Oh,
and if you can see every relationship as an awakener to your own healing, then it's not about fixing the kid or finding the three perfect things to tell your child. There's no such thing. It's not about strategy as much as it's about healing and coming from abundance. And as long as we come from control and fear, we're going to mess it up. If we come from abundance and empowerment, even if you say the worst thing in the world, you're going to be okay, because it's how you look at the child, how you look at the world, which is really how you look at yourself. So that's what I teach in conscious parenting, is to change how you look at yourself. Because when you look at yourself with self-acceptance, self-love, unconditional honor, and empowerment, you will give that to your child. It's not about the strategy around bedtime or how to get them to be a super achiever. It's about how healed you are when you are in their presence, because that will create within them a sense of stability, soothing, calm, and inner connection. What is missing in the world is not more data and more information. What's missing in the world is more healed individuals who are deeply connected.
so beautiful. What would you say? Because you're working with clients all around the world. I would love to know the stat, but it's probably almost every country in the world. Can you see different patterns depending on where people are from, like different cultures, and what is the scenario that mothers play out more often, whether they're European or Mexican or from Northern America? Like, I'm very curious because for me, it's like we think that a lot of these values are ours until we realize they're actually cultural.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole world, in terms of uh, influence, is now trending Western, right?
Mhm.
So it's pervasive how the West, honors a certain beauty, a certain achievement, a certain wealth status. It's becoming global now, which is really sad. However, there are cultural differences. So, in my culture, for example, in India, there's so much focus on achievement, but the woman, the mother, is honored more, I think, than say the West for being a stay at home mother, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to compare cultures because each culture has so much unconsciousness in it that even something positive can be a negative. So it's just senseless to compare cultures because you're starting off from such different first foundations that it's just useless, because what works in one culture just will not work in another culture. But I
Right.
think overall we're trending Western, which is harmful when it is not balanced with another kind of antidote effect, you know.
What would you say is the first step for women that, I guess, awareness to realize that we operate from the head, right? We operate from our mind. We operate we calculate what's the best solution instead of kind of like connecting with our heart and listening to intuition. What would be the best practices to change that, to have that awareness? I'm like, what can I do to actually be connected more to my heart?
Well, I think first your life will show you that it's not working, right? Your body will break down, your relationships won't work, you'll be exhausted and tired and irritable and snappy. Like
Wait, but
I've
that's normal in the Western world. That's considered so normal that
I
we
know,
normalized all of these things and just wait, normal to have two coffees. It's normal to be exhausted. Isn't it
I
part of
know.
being an adult?
I
Right?
know. So we are becoming more and more disconnected from our feminine as women, and disconnected from who it is we authentically are. We're so working so hard to be like men, and that is such a wrong course to take. We're either trying to become like men or become like who men want us to be, and we're forgetting, how to be in our maternal energy, whether a parent or not, our feminine energy, our softness, our circular ability to be interconnected rather than linear and forward thinking. And I'm not saying we should only be feminine, but we've kind of disregarded our feminine. And we think that life is about the hustle and achieving, and
Yeah.
my goodness, we're going to lose out on the softness of our feminine world, which is to take it easy, rest, be quiet, be less, be more in the less, and be very connected to the present moment. And listen, I'm a woman out there just like you who gets pulled, but as I get pulled, I also pull back. And I know now, I'm in my 50s, not to give in to the pressure to do. The men can do it. I know that it ends up nowhere. You see, it's when you have the wisdom to realize that all this is ending up in a big fat zero, you'll stop going, you'll stop running. You'll be like, you go. I know it's getting you nowhere. And it's taking you faster to the grave, your spiritual grave, than if I just go slow. So you
No.
go ahead, you come first, you take all the prizes. Those things are meaningless now to me. But I understand in my 30s, I was allured by it, I was seduced by it. But
Mhm.
now in my 50s, I have the comfort and the privilege of perspective to not be seduced by the trinkets of culture. Come, wear these diamonds, go to this gala, be on top of a list, get invited to a party, all
Write
that.
another book. Yeah.
Write another book, win
Yeah.
another prize, get another $100,000, all that, been there, done that. So then you realize that those are empty promises, and you feel compassion for those who think those things matter, because that they don't matter, right? Jim Carrey said, "I wish for every person to become rich and famous, just to realize that it's empty." But Eastern spirituality already teaches this, and that's what I teach my clients, that what you're looking for or what you're driving your children toward are false ideals, they are illusions. And the sooner you realize it, the better you will be.
Well, this is extremely powerful, and it what you say has so much credibility. Not only because I feel energetically that you live it, but also Oprah, all of these people, and you can see that their success comes from their heart, not necessarily billions of dollars that they accumulated. So you have a first-hand experience with someone, but it's so hard when you're in your 30s and you feel like, wait, but maybe I'll just do this one more project, right? Like you said, I like the word seduce because it's really what's happening, right? This seduction of that success is trying to tell you that on the other side of this prize and this job is your happiness.
Right, which is a lie. It's not. And that's why living in the present and entering a sense of deep connection and meaning and purpose right here, right now, in the mess of your life, that is happiness. But we've been told that happiness is out there after that. And that's the biggest trap, because when you get there, you don't find it, then you think something is wrong with you, and then you try again. And that is the endless cycle of this addiction to looking for something outside that never comes true, but it keeps you going, you know?
Which I think it's beautifully connects to biohacking, because biohacking is all about optimizing and managing, and nervous system is the biggest thing right now. What do? Do you have to cold plunge, and you do these breath work and this and that, but it's also like, why do you stress in the first place? You stress because you wake up and you feel like, I'm already behind.
Yes. Yeah. I
Like,
mean, can you imagine waking up always feeling like you're behind?
I do. There are days when I wake up and I'm like, being in LA and being behind Europe and New York, you wake up at 7, like you wake up to emails and people wanting things. It's difficult to say. It's okay, right? Like
Right. So
it's the
you're
seduction
finding,
is
or
very,
what you're
very tempting that I'm
suggesting is that
working on,
your
and I think
life is
seduction is
tethered.
very, very tempting that I'm working on.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so that I think what even though I'm not a parent, like I resonate with your message and with your energy so much, because I think you really bringing that heart and the light into the Western world. I can imagine that's also not always received easily with um with other experts that are very like head and mind oriented, and they're like 6:30 p.m. and it's the schedule and like the rigor, because you're like bring the feminine softness into the parenting.
Right. And I think it's really about, it's not even so much about a different style, it's just about a different paradigm. And if you live within that paradigm, you get seduced, or you get called or pulled to that madness. But if you live in another paradigm, in another grid of the matrix, you have a different set of principles. So it's almost like you have to choose, do I want to live there or here? And if you live in that matrix, you will get pulled in to the bullshit of life, and you will think that that matters, and you will pay that price. And then if you leave, you won't get pulled into the madness, but you'll have to pay the price of being out of that matrix. So
Mhm.
it's always a price. It depends on what prize you want. What
Mhm.
price are you willing to pay for your prize? There is a price. It's just what are you chasing, right? Each one of us gets to decide with intention what life we want to live, and there will be a price no matter what. But you have to ask, to what end am I willing to sacrifice? And I've made up my mind, for example, I'm not willing to sacrifice for that end, but other people think it's worthy of a sacrifice. So they will learn when they arrive there and realize, oh, it wasn't worth it.
That's so I would love for you to, if you don't mind, if we can like do a little bit of a scene, or just like an example of what a conscious parenting conversation would look like with a child that's a little older, right? Because we were talking about the very early, and what if your mom 12, 15-year old, the teenager, and what would be what would a conscious conversation look like when your child is misbehaving, doesn't come home on time, and disregards the curfew, and overall you feel like the child isn't respecting you? What would be
What
like?
So the conscious parenting approach doesn't deal with the child, it deals with the parent.
Mhm.
So we handle the child inside the parent. So I ask the parent, what's coming up for you? What's triggering you? What are your belief systems around how bad or good your child is? And as we uncover the parent's story, we realize that it's the parent who's feeling all these feelings, and because of that they're unable to connect to themselves, and because of that they cannot connect to their child. So once the parent has done the work, then if the parent is coming from a place of abundance and worth and empowerment, then that parent is very different when they're dealing with the disrespectful child than the
Mhm.
parent who's triggered. When the parent is calm and regulated and in a state of empowerment and resources, that parent is very playful and calm with their child, and can create boundaries and go, no, we're not going to hit mommy, or we're not going to do that right now, but let's do that. And the parent is very creative and resourceful in their ability to handle the child. It's a very different conversation, but we have to first deal with the parent and what's going on inside the parent.
I love to like imagine like the traditional system would be like, oh, this is 5 questions to ask your child, or like this is the conversation to this is the script. And instead of just realizing, oh, I feel massively disrespected by my child not listening to me. What about this triggers me? And so you don't go out to the child, you go into the room within yourself and start asking yourself all of these questions that like why is this coming up, and treating your child as your biggest teacher, because I'm like, oh, thank you for showing me where I'm not free, and being a mirror to my own feelings.
Right. And then you can go back to your child and talk to them with empathy. You can help them have choices. And I teach all this in my books. But the first place we start is what's going on inside the parent.
Mm, super beautiful. I think a lot of people aren't aware of their inner child, right? Like I have on my phone, I have a photo of myself when I was 5 years old. And this is the only person I'm trying to make proud, because I'm like, this is my inner child. This is like every time I have an issue, I'm like, this is because
Yes.
she's trying to be heard and seen. So it's a great reminder on my phone. I'm like, we're doing this together, right? And so when she feels abandoned, she feels unimportant, she doesn't feel smart enough, whatever, all of these things are coming up. I'm trying to like, that's actually is a great answer to my own question. This is the first child I need to parent. I don't have to work for my firstborn.
Absolutely. And that's a great place to start because you're already a parent of your own inner child.
Wow, super beautiful. What has been the hardest for you in your own journey as a parent? I know you talk a lot about removing your ego, and if you can just help people understand what do you mean by that?
Well, because we've been raised in unconscious ways in our own childhood, where we were not allowed to exist as we are or allowed to feel worthy as we are, we created a lot of ego masks to get what we wanted, but we couldn't get in a direct way. So we created the mask of achievement, or the mask of the good girl, or the mask of the people pleaser, to get our needs of validation and love and acceptance. And so we wear these masks, and now we don't know how to get our needs met in an authentic way. So the work I do with parents is to help them release these masks so that they can begin to access their own authentic self and feel worthy in their own inner connection to themselves. So they're not looking to get their needs met from the outside world.
It sounds easy, but it's a life's journey. Is there anything for you personally that you find that has been challenging? Because I love that that's one thing I love about you, that you're very open about your own journey, and you always are like, guys, I still make mistakes. This is part of the process, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I really love that about you.
I mean, I find everything kind of challenging. I have to, constantly parent myself. I have to constantly stay in my own lane. I want to control my child, just like every single parent out there. We just want them to fit into our fantasy. So, releasing my child, honoring my child, understanding my child from my child's point of view, not from my point of view, oh, I would do it like this, or I think this, or things should be done this way. I have to constantly shut up and listen and fall back and trust. It's very hard, but it is, for me, it is like a spiritual practice. I get to practice, I get to heal, I get to grow, I get to evolve. So I look at those challenging moments with gratitude, because I get to evolve. So even though it's difficult, I take it as a lesson for myself.
Oh, that's beautiful. And the final question, what would you say is the connection between parenting, being conscious, and biohacking and kind of like wellness? If you were just like the overall overarching idea of how connected our nervous system and our spirituality is to our biology.
Oh my God, it's so key how we learn to regulate in childhood, how we learn to stay in a sense of calm and safety has so much to do with our wiring now. And if we don't learn how to, you know, meditate and slow down in whatever way, you can do it in a biohacking way. I do it in a more, I call it more mindful way, in using techniques. If we don't incorporate these practices in our daily life, go out every day, walk outside in sunlight, get your heart rate pumping, get your blood flowing, be still, listen to yourself. I mean, these are my hacks, so to speak. If I don't do them on a regular basis, I will deteriorate, I will act out, I will cause harm, and most of the harm will be caused to myself. So these are practices that we must do on a daily basis to keep ourselves in the most healthy state of mind.
And I also love that, with biohacking, a lot of parents stress out about like, my child needs to eat the most organic, healthiest food, and we're obsessed about the diet. But diet is not only what you eat, is how good your nervous system is, because we all have that person that has a dysregulated nervous system that being around is stressful. It feels like walking on eggshells or feels overwhelming. But if you fixed your nervous system, that's going to be the best biohacking diet for your child, because your child will feel at peace. And it's way more important than whether, broccoli is better than asparagus.
100%. That's it. That's it. If you can come from a calm, regulated place and see the beauty in life, in the present moment, and in your child, that's it. That's the best parenting strategy right there.
I love it. Dr. Shefali, thank you so much for your time. I love you and adore you as a, like, not only with the work that you do, but as a, like, I see you as a woman and I'm like, thank you. Thank you. No, it makes me want to cry, but like, thank you for being who you are and just like showing that it is possible to have the two, and be crushing and also be feminine. And I love it. I'm really inspired by you and your work. And like, I really appreciate it.
Oh, oh, thank you, sweetie. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I'm here to help you when you become a mom, and I'm sure you'll be amazing.
No, I think it's just really important that you bring such an important message and you're making it mainstream, which is really hard because telling a Western person that it's in here, not out there, is really hard. They're like,
Really,
no, no, everyone else has to change. What are you talking about? And it's
really
a
hard.
difficult message that you bring to the masses, and I love it, and I'm here for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting my work. And I'm here for you when you need me.